didn't act right. So everybody's ready and we're here. Do we have a quorum? I can't see everybody here.
We do. Stefan is missing.
Yes, he told me he would be.
Okay. Everyone's here.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, great. All right, then I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's Tuesday, November 8th, 2022, the Bellows Falls Village Trustees regular meeting. And some of us are down here in the Town Hall over theater. I'm on Zoom due to illness. I just want to make sure everybody else doesn't get sick. It's not the C word. It's just a cold from my grandkids. Awesome. Okay. So approve the minutes of Tuesday, October 11th, 2022 and October 25th, 2022.
That we approve the minutes?
Need a motion to approve.
You need a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion over either set of minutes?
A question. I had a question because obviously I missed the meeting on the 25th, but the issue with the sludge dryer with the manufacturer coming in and the efficiency Vermont, is it just is it the electric utilization, the problems with the dryer?
No, what they're trying to do is they want to come up with a more efficient way to level out the utilization. So Efficiency Vermont's working with us on a project. The next thing we have to do is a 30-hour test. They call it a 30-hour burn. So we have to run the machine for 30 hours straight, and then they'll take the spikes and then try to figure out a way to give us a way to modify that so we can make it run more efficiently.
Okay.
So we're waiting on doing the 30-hour burn. Rob's going to try to do it here soon, and then we'll come back to you when they give us a recommendation as to what they propose.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Oh, sorry.
No.
I thought I heard someone else. All right, then, if there's no further discussion on the two sets of minutes, October 11th and October 25th, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed? Okay. All right, then we have approved the minutes. Moving on to any additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting.
No, I have nothing.
Okay. Then we move on to public comment. Is there any public who wants to comment?
Let's see here. Nope, we've got a couple of folks, but nobody's here physically, so I think nobody's got a hand up, Deb.
Okay, all right. Then we move on to the manager's report. Scott.
So I'll hold this up for the camera, and the police department have been passing these around to folks that have left their cars parked overnight on the street. I know it's hard to believe with the weather getting up to 70 degrees in November, but it's actually winter parking ban season. Started November 1st. So we have been putting these red warnings on cars and trying to give people a heads up. And at the end of this week, we'll stop giving people warnings and start ticketing folks that are still parking overnight. So if you've received one of these, please get yourself an off-street parking pass or find a place where your vehicle can be so that you don't end up with a ticket and have all that aggravation. So next week, they will be ticketing folks that leave their cars parked overnight on the street. That's pretty much it. Everything else is on the agenda, so I'll leave it short and sweet.
All right, then. I heard someone talking. On the agenda, first thing is the national opioid settlement discussion.
Yeah, so I put this on there, and I guess it was a little confusing, and I apologize. Deb had asked me what the actual amounts were. So we've actually received two separate distributions. So the first was back in the summertime. We got that back roughly in July. The first distribution to the village was about $3,186. We're scheduled now for a second distribution. It's the same fund, if you remember. They sued the opioid drug makers and distributors. There was a settlement with like 49 of the 50 attorneys general, something along those lines. That created this fund. And then they've been distributing money out of this fund if you had put your community in for part of this settlement, which we had previously. So our second distribution is due up in November, and that one is for $3,348. So the reason I included that, plus some information, if you notice, that's addressed to the town, was the town had received a presentation from representatives from the Turning Point South. They wanted to do some community outreach and try to work on some drug outreach and interdiction work. So the town had agreed to basically create a position for them for an outreach person. It would be roughly a 24-week trial. So the town money to this date has been at least allocated to that program. And I just brought this forward to this board because we really have not made any formal indication as to how you might want to spend the money. If you had any particular ideas of programs in mind, if you'd like to have somebody come and do a presentation, I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention because we've had at least 2 distributions. I don't know how many more we're going to get. It's unclear to me how many in total, if this is going to continue on for multiple distributions or if we're getting close to the end. So it's kind of unclear to me, but I think there might be at least one more coming and maybe more than that. So
And when do we receive the second payment?
it'll come in November.
Okay.
Yeah, they gave us a notice in October, usually 30 days after the notice period, they wire the funds. So
Yeah.
they're pretty consistent.
Okay. Are there other trustees who have questions or comments?
Who's Turning Point South? Where are they located?
Well, they've been working with our folks at Greater Falls Connection. So Laura came and presented with 2 folks from Turning Point South. So they have various programs that they run, a lot through Springfield, but also they have a satellite operation here. And I believe they're also a fairly large operation. I think it's Brattleboro as well. And it's drug treatment, interdiction, awareness, lots of counseling, opportunities for group and other types of therapies. And the goal is to either help people in addiction try to get clean, or people who are clean try to stay clean. So there's a variety of ways that they try to help people do that. As Deb and I had talked earlier, it's a little bit of a difficult situation because so many of these folks end up relapsing. So it's really hard to gauge just how useful some of these expenditures might be and when you start to measure the outcomes, right? So unfortunately, there's so many people that relapse. It's really hard to say, are we making a difference or not making a difference? But it's something that I wanted to bring the board's attention and just get your feedback and input as to how you might want to look at putting this money to work or letting it build, or just whatever your sort of opinions are at the moment. I really don't have any specific proposal to offer you tonight.
Wasn't the, I have a question.
Go ahead.
If I remember correctly, there's certain stipulations on what this money can go towards, right? Doesn't it have to go back as part of these preventative programs and whatnot?
It's really kind of loose in terms of how or what they would define that as, but it's supposed to be in the arena of health and wellness.
Yeah.
But how do you define that and what programs actually? I mean, there's no guidelines to.
There's not.
No. So you really sort of have a pretty open playing field for how you might want to look at putting that money to work. So.
Can I ask? Go ahead, Jake.
This is Jeff. I was just.
Oh, Jeff, sorry.
Curious about the proposal to the town of Rockingham was requesting some money for a one-time grant. And I guess curious what other resources in our community are available for rehabilitation and services for those who have addictions. Whether that's something that we want to sort of have a sense of.
Well, there's lots of different programs and not all of them are under the same umbrellas, right? So it's
Right.
hard to really give you guys a comprehensive view. And again, this first piece that they're doing from the town is really just a sort of a trial to see how it might work and if it's going to be effective and help get more people into either recovery or hopefully into treatment and stay in recovery. So
Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think,
Now it's James.
yeah, I think I'd want to try to be sure that the money is used here in our village.
Mhm.
We're not exempt from this problem, and but I agree with Scott that it's very hard to know where the good investment is.
right.
And you know, so much of our social service network, you know, has really been decimated with COVID. Parks Place was a thriving community service center, and I'm not sure. I think Laura's one of the only tenants left in that building, and I think Laura's leaving.
Yes, she is.
Right, which is a shame because she's been a great force in this community. But I think that I'd like to hear more. Not so much pitches for the money, but
Right.
you know, just where the good investment would be.
Yeah, that's a real challenge. And I guess, you know, it's something we don't have to address right away. Our budget, really, we don't start addressing it anyway for a few months, but it's something for us to consider. It's not a huge amount of money. Obviously, you know, the opioid problem that we've experienced is much greater than $7,000 has got to fix.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
at least something that I think we should try to do and figure out how we might be able to put it to work. And
Right.
maybe there's ways we can leverage it with other monies and see if it could be helpful. So, and hopefully there's more coming. You know, it's incredible that, you know, these small amounts come dribbling out of this huge problem that's, you know, impacted not just this community, but lots and lots of communities. So,
So
So
we
thi-
just have to,
I just wanted to say this proposal here was the one that they offered they presented to the town of Rockingham, and they have funded it. Is that correct?
yes, they did.
So we don't have a proposal at this point.
No, I just put that in there just for a talking point and just for your information.
Okay. So where do we go from here? Do we ask people, like just put it on the website to ask for proposals for these funds? So we can see, because I know that there are a lot of organizations doing bits and pieces of drug rehab and programs to assist them with things like housing and so on and so forth, in that area. So health and wellness. So it's not just Turning Point. And the last time we heard from them, I think, was when they came to see about renting, leasing, or buying one of Robert McBride's houses to use as a location to house, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 people. But that's been years ago, and I haven't heard anything from them since. So I don't know how active they are in the community. I guess I'd like to know that. So.
Well, this one page here, the proposal to the town of Rockingham, that was included. They refer to signage specifically at the carriage house. So I would have to. Parks Place has a carriage house. So
Correct. It's in the back of their current property.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they also mentioned George Street, which is on the backside, right? So.
And it's not something that I expected any direction specifically tonight. I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention. And as we get into the budget, maybe people will approach you, or just information about this conversation might drift out, and maybe we'll get some inquiries or some some people that have some ideas. And
so
Right.
in the meantime, where does that money sit? So
we put it in an account. It sits as a dedicated account. We don't stick it in the general funds. We actually created an account for that, so that it won't just get vacuumed into our general operations. So,
Right.
and then we can appropriate it as you see fit, as we go forward. So,
Okay. Is that on in our monthly report? If it is, I don't know where it is. I haven't found it yet.
I'll see if it can.
I'll ask, yes, I will ask Alyssa to highlight it, because we do have it should be a separate income, but I'll make sure
Right.
that we highlight it in our next updated general fund.
And they don't tell you like how many times you get this?
No. I think, I know, it's a little bit unusual, right? Because there is a base settlement amount which got funded, and then I think they invest that over time, and as they do more distributions, that grows.
Yeah.
So they sort of,
Right.
figure out, eventually, I think the fund runs out of money. But when that's gonna happen is not clear to me. So,
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what happens next. Public safety, the next item on the agenda is the public safety server update and request for funding of phase 1.
right, so a while ago, like maybe up to close to a year or so ago, you made some changes in our records retention policy, and we were also looking at a variety of options because we had that failing server that was housing all of the data from the cameras around the outside of the police facility as well as inside the facility. And so at one point we ended up with close to, I think it was 14 terabytes, and I don't know how many zeros that is, but apparently it's a huge amount of data.
Yeah.
And it was creating problems that we could not get it backed up. So we worked with Dominion Tech and was able to get a full backup of all of that data. So that has been accomplished, which was very, very helpful. And the reason that data is somewhat important is there are pieces of that that are still parts of active criminal cases and required for investigation and potentially for some future proceedings. And we have to be able to access that information if it's requested, either by the state AG's office or by defense attorneys. So unfortunately, I just can't discriminate, just wipe it all out and start fresh from, a new date. So with that in mind, we had to go through this fairly painful process to back it all up, which we now do have it on a hard drive, sort of a mixed media. And now the next phase of this is to give us a dedicated PC, which is part of this proposal, so that it can sit segregated but also protected so that people can't manipulate the data or it can't be erased. And so that if somebody does have to access it, we have to also be able to show that it was protected and not in any way manipulated. So that's part of this proposal. And then the second thing that we're doing is Axon has been, as most of our vendors have been, backlogged with supply chain problems. So we've been in communication with them for almost a full year about the camera proposal. And I just emailed them again this week to say our grant application, it's 6 months from the award letter to when they expect you to submit for the reimbursement. So that'll be up at the end of December. So basically the last email that I sent to Axon was, you guys either got to get these cameras here or we're going to lose access to this money and you're going to screw up our project going forward. So they assured me that they'll be able to deliver, get these installed, and then we'll be able to submit the reimbursement through through the grant. And then that will then carry us to the next phase, which is we have to make a decision about the existing server and whether or not we want to take all of that data, move it to the cloud and become a fully cloud-based system, or do we want to replace that server knowing that we're going to have to replace it again in another 5 years? But I wanted them to give me additional benefit cost analysis because it didn't make sense to me when they presented it to me that the numbers didn't make sense. So I said, they got to go back, and if I can't understand it and explain it to you, there's no way I can advocate for it. So that second phase is still not developed enough, and it should be developed enough in time for us to take that into consideration when we do budgets later on in the beginning of 2023. So there's more to come. That's why I called this one phase 1, because it was part of that previous discussion. Sort of brings us up to where we are now, with the idea that we're going to have options for you to take a look at as we jump into our budget for the following year. And that should stabilize, I think, all of the required digital architecture for the police department So they'll at least be in a good situation. We won't have failing hard drives, failures on backups, which were occurring on a fairly regular basis just because of the size of the data. And we'll have all of this new data out on the evidence.com website, so it can be accessed if needed, and also managed on the evidence.com site, so I don't have to manage it on a server. So that'll free up a lot of space. So we'll be able to, if we do replace the server, to replace it with a much smaller and much more cost-effective unit. So those are just some of the things that are happening, but I did want to come back to you and ask for some additional money in this year's budget just to finish up this first phase. So that's what the background and a little bit of a long-winded explanation as to what's in this request for the additional $15,000.
Now, is this dealing with the cameras or the server?
It's dealing with this point. This proposal deals with all of the old camera data, which is now on these hard drives, which will have to go through this new dedicated PC. And then additionally, it'll pay for more, a portion of the Axon piece, the 16,637. So that's part of that request as well. And then that means that all of that new data from Axon will go directly to the web and be managed through that evidence.com website. So we won't have this problem of building up huge terabytes of data from the interview rooms and from the exterior cameras. And the other one I think that it also does on a continuous basis, if there's anybody in the cells, it has to take a continuous video of that as well. Either when they're in holding or whatever time they spend in detention in the cell, it has to have a video of that time.
Right.
So that's what it will do.
Okay. And we spent ARPA money on this $15,000.
We haven't spent anything yet.
Well, that's the question.
Well, we do have some money in our general fund. We could spend it out of fund balance, or you could ask for it out of ARPA. It didn't really specify. I wanted to have the conversation with the board. So the funds are certainly available in either location. You still have $694,000 in fund balance in the general fund.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is
What's
very
it?
healthy.
Okay. So I'd like to ask the rest of the trustees what they think. Anyone?
I think we should probably take it out of the fund balance. I'm tempted to use ARPA because I think finding a perfect use for that money is going to be difficult. But it would seem to me to do that tonight would be kind of a knee-jerk reaction. And as Scott mentioned, we do have a good fund balance. And so I guess I would lean that way. And this is this isn't intended to add up correctly, right?
No,
No,
No.
okay.
no, not at all.
You're
There's
just
other monies that I'm going to be sort of
15,
mixing
this
and
is
matching, but the
15,000.
15 will, right,
Yeah.
cover sort of what I need to cover.
right.
It's not really in the current operating.
Do you have a sense of what the next phase, we're looking at equal amount or?
No, a server could be
Fine.
anywhere, depending upon the size of the server, it could be anywhere from 20 to 25,000. And the potential of taking all the data, digitizing it and putting it in the cloud is, again, it was not clear to me. That's why I asked them to redo that, because the numbers that I was getting for that didn't make sense to me. So it's in that neighborhood. So we can, again, replace the current server with a much smaller server because all of this digital camera data is now going to be gone.
Gone, yeah.
So, which was a huge piece of, was causing problems over there.
Anyone else? Or a motion?
I was gonna make a motion to fund this total additional funding request for phase one of $15,000 from the fund balance. Current fund balance.
I'll second.
And it's seconded. Any further discussion on this motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it passes. You have your 15,000.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda is the Vermont Drinking Water State Revolving Fund for the federal fiscal year of 2022 for lead service line inventory update.
The last time we spoke and we talked about some of the issues that were happening in the water and some of our larger costs that we were looking at, just wanted to bring to your attention. I had mentioned that the federal government was requiring an entire inventory of lead services in your entire service area. And at that point, we still had not received this listing as to whether or not we were going to be funded or if it was going to be a loan, because they had originally discussed that the drinking water fund was only going to loan people money to do that, which is great, but just means we got more debt, and we've been sensitive to how much debt we want to take on in our utilities. So this has now been sort of a good news proposition. They've done some follow-up work with the drinking water with the state folks, and now you're actually going to receive a loan, but then the entire balance of the loan is going to be forgiven. So
Yay.
basically, they're going to pay for this $256,000, which is their estimate as to what it's going to take to do the full service inventory based on the size of our system, the kinds of field work they're going to have to do, the kinds of reporting that are required by the federal government. And you remember that all has to be done by October of 2024. So there'll be more follow-up to this as we get deeper into the detail, but I just wanted to give you this heads up because I thought it was pretty important that, you know, we're not on the hook for another $250,000 in our water fund for a federal requirement.
I'm a bit mystified by this because
Me too.
I'm under the assumption that we don't have lead pipes in the ground and things like that, but
Well,
what
they're-
exactly?
they're going to require you to test not just where we have our service that goes to your house service, which is then your responsibility into your house, but they actually want to test that
So they're
portion
Okay.
that connects into your house. So that's where I think that's going to be. With our older houses in this community, we're going to have quite a few lead service lines, I can guarantee you.
So will they have to test every single one?
You have to test every single one. And there's going to be a protocol involved in that. And then there's going to have to be an inventory involved in that. And then at some point, depending upon the standards that they set, we may or may not then have to notify people about what requirements, what they would have to do to rectify that situation. So
Now, do we manage this or does the state manage this?
the state is not going to do this for us. There's a couple of webinars coming up in December where they're going to outline more of this program. So I'll have better information after, I think it's December the 9th or something, is the next sort of state level update as to how this whole thing's going to work. So I'm not 100% sure yet. My guess is you'll have to hire third parties. Some of it might involve excavation and then some sort of testing where they have to take samples. And how that all is going to work and then get reported and then get collected into a database is going to be fascinating. Because that's every water system in every place in the entire state. So huge undertaking.
Wow.
But again, the good news at this point, at least, we're not on the hook for any local dollars right now as that program gets underway, but there'll be much more to it. And somehow, I can't believe that we're going to get through this without spending some money somewhere.
That's what I was just gonna ask.
We will. We will. So, I want to bring that to your attention because it's such a huge undertaking and it's going to, you're going to get a lot of people are going to be upset, right? They're going to say, I don't want you coming onto my property.
Well, we're gonna have to dig up Jigs' driveway.
Yeah.
dig up his bushes, or God forbid, he'll be all
No,
mad
my
at
water
me.
service comes in from schools.
Oh, okay.
You know, something, I'll ruin his prized azaleas or something, you know, something bad's gonna happen,
I already replaced mine.
Yeah.
so. But yeah, yeah, it's quite an undertaking, and it's not gonna be easy. So, and I'm sure we'll hear much more about it as it goes forward.
Wade, you had something?
No,
No? Oh, okay.
no.
Anyone else? Jeff, did you?
No,
No.
thank you.
All right, then. Well, happy to hear it's $0 at this point, but we'll see how that goes.
To be continued.
Yeah. Next
that.
item on the agenda then is the proposed health insurance update per personnel committee.
Yeah, so we had a couple of meetings with our union folks, and Deb was there, Peter's been there. The goal of the conversation was, there was a lot of feedback from employee survey, as well as some folks that had left, about what's our benefit package, and there was a lot of negative feedback about the health insurance plan, that we no longer offered the full range of coverage under the Blue Cross, which is a platinum, gold, and silver, right? They have 3 different levels. So we looked at, when Heather came on board, one of the things I asked her to do is, let's take a look at our plans and see, are there ways that we can potentially broaden our offering and offer employees a choice, but not create such a financial burden on the village and the town that it's just a non-starter. So she pulled a lot of information together. We had some meetings, we had some proposals that went back and forth. We made some adjustments. We came up with this as sort of a final position that ultimately the personnel committee said that satisfied all of the union folks at the table, and would at least then be eligible to be a side letter agreement as part of our current labor agreements, because there's actually language in our current labor agreements about the percentage of participation for the incentive and what the percentages is of the reimbursement, that type of thing. So with all that being said, the way this plan would work is, you would have an option as an employee if you wanted to enroll in the platinum, the gold, or the silver. Whatever plan you enroll in, there would be an 80% participation by us, the employer. The employee would be responsible for 20%. The medical reimbursements, which are right now $2,000, I believe, or $2,500 and $3,000. Heather's on.
Yeah, 2,500.
Currently it's 2,000 and 3,000.
Oh,
2,000 and 3,000. So would go down to 1,000 for singles and 1,500 for 2-person or more. And then the insurance incentive, which is currently at 50% of the premiums, would go and be reduced to 40% of the current platinum plan premium. That's hard to say without me spelling it.
Currently 50% of
It's
the gold,
currently 50%
of the gold.
of the gold.
Mhm.
And the reason that we looked at that number is it has moved over time. Some people remember, and Deb remembers it as low as 30%. Other
Mhm.
people remember it at 35%. I'm not sure when it went to 50%. I don't think it was that long ago, but you could do 40% and not cut significantly into what the benefit is for people who are not taking the plan. And that was relatively important because there's a pretty large number of people that are not taking the plan. The incentive is actually important.
Mhm.
So if we just decided, all right, we're just going to cut the incentive to 20%, or just pick a number, I think we would end up actually hurting ourselves with recruitment and retention. So when you pile all the numbers together, and I spoke to Jiggs on the phone, and he was just wanting to get a broader presentation as to where we stand on health insurance in general, because he wanted to just get a feel for some of the numbers and the impacts.
Mhm.
The Blue Cross Blue Shield premiums for 2023, which is, I believe we gave you a copy of this in your packet, right? So that's the plan offerings for 2023. So when an employee goes to open enrollment, which is later on this month and through the December, so this would start January 1 of 23. This is the outline of the benefits of the plans that are currently available in Vermont. we don't have any control over what's offered, how it's put together, what the maximum amount of pockets are, the co-pays, or any of the plan benefits. That's all established outside of our control. What's also outside of our control is the amount that the state will allow for premiums. And this year, the state did not do us any favors. They allowed premiums to rise upwards of almost 12% across the board on medical insurance. So standing still, if we did nothing and you take away all of these packages of information and we just literally stayed the same, the health insurance burden overall for all of the employees, it's roughly 42 people, so it's town and village, would go up by about $100,000 just in premium. So standing alone, doing nothing would be $100,000. Now, obviously that's split between what the town portion would be and what the village portion would be. And you can pretty much come up with, what those numbers would be in terms of the village's bottom line. Then on top of that, we're saying that there'll be some additional costs to us as we look at this new plan because the platinum premiums are more expensive.
Right.
And there is some understanding that there will be some movement, right? Some people that are in gold are going to take advantage of the platinum and spend the extra money for the enhanced benefit. So overall, we figure that there'll be potentially, and this is where the numbers get a little bit up in the air, it could be about another 31,000 based on the medical reimbursement, that incentive program, and then based on sort of where we stand with the changes to the combination of the medical reimbursement and the incentive. And I hedge on that a little bit because once you go through open enrollment, people can make choices. So I can only look at what my snapshot is today, right, and say, okay, we have 21 people on gold and 2 on silver, and roughly 17 that are not taking the benefit. If we open it up to platinum, would you assume all 21 are going to go to platinum? I guess you could, and there'll be, that would be your highest potential cost, or if they just stayed the same, there wouldn't be really much change at all. So somewhere in that neighborhood of another 30 to 40,000 is probably the overall impact across both town and village. If we decide, right, if we decide to go for this. So the reason I'm bringing this tonight is it's time sensitive because if we do agree to this, I have to bring it to the town next week. Then we would have to agree to have the letters for the letter agreements with the unions signed, and then we would have to start open enrollment. And all that would have to happen so we'd have enough time to have an open enrollment, get the contracts from Blue Cross, and then start the plan year for January 1st. No matter what we do on top of all of this, just to make it more confusing and provide more information to you, we're changing the way we handle the medical reimbursements for people. The way we're doing it now is you would bring me receipts and our finance department would tally those up and issue checks to you based on the amount of reimbursement you were eligible for, whether you were family or individual. A lot of paperwork, a lot of extra checks. You guys probably see them coming through the bills. A little bit of concern about how we're handling those in relationship to medical privacy and HIPAA issues. It's just a challenge. I think Heather's been doing a good job of trying to keep things, just keep us out of trouble in that arena. But Blue Cross already offers a program that gives you basically a reimbursement card and makes the employee responsible for that process so that it's managed online. So you get your reimbursement card, the town pays whatever their bill through the reimbursement and up to that employee's amount. And then we don't have to handle or manage their money or manage their submissions. It's all handled outside of our scope. And that's already available to us without any cost. I don't know, for some reason we had not implemented this before. Maybe it's been increased or improved recently. I don't know, but we are definitely moving to that medical reimbursement card no matter what we do to save ourselves a tremendous amount of work inside the office.
Yeah. It's money.
So, yeah, that time is important for us in terms of trying to do things that are beneficial to me, like helping prepare for audits and doing workers' comp reporting and unemployment insurance benefits reporting and all the other requirements that office has to do that are outside of just paying bills and paying people. So that'll free up some time for us to do some of those other things, which will be helpful. So with all that being said, that's sort of a large, long-winded discussion about what's in front of you tonight.
A question on the medical reimbursement. Heather would know this. What is the, you mentioned here that the total potential reimbursement currently is what, 59,000?
Correct.
Okay.
How much do we typically spend?
I'm unfortunately, I'm not at work today. And I can ask Alyssa that question. But I know that not all the people that are eligible for reimbursement actually submit for reimbursement for various reasons. I don't know what that is. But I can get that number and email it to you guys tomorrow.
I think by reducing the amount, you know, and you have this theoretical saving, it's probably not a real saving at all. And I think to position it as a potential saving is not accurate.
Well, I would guess, Jigs, I would argue a little bit against that, just from the standpoint of that's at a 50% of the current benefit rate. And I think most people use 50% of their $2,000 just for general wellness stuff when you go to the doctors, or you just had, you know, the
Right, and
basic.
they'll use that going forward too. It's that, because they're
Right.
still gonna have 1,000 and 1,500.
Right.
So the, you know, what I'm saying is that if they typically underspend it by half, then this cut from 3,000 to 2,000 or 1,500 is really not a cut at all.
Yeah, you know, that's why I worded it as potential savings, right? Right now, I'm guessing the budget is at 59,000. It's the maximum that we would spend if everyone.
Everybody spends every dollar.
Right.
Correct.
Right. And
I think you should have that. I think we should have a better feel for what that is.
Sure.
yeah, I can definitely get those numbers tomorrow from Alyssa when I'm in.
Can you separate it by town and village so we know the difference?
40%,
Because there is a difference. Yeah.
40% of platinum versus 50% of the gold is practically a wash.
It is.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Right.
it's
Correct.
so in other words, they're assuming people go to the platinum plan. The village is not going to achieve really any savings from that, and if there's no savings from the cut from 2,000 to 1,000 and 3,000 to 1,500, it's like, you know, it's a big number, and you know, employee benefits are fine, but it was just a couple of years ago that we imposed the gold plan as the I mean, that was a big to do. It took a lot of work, a lot of effort, and you know, I think that this is you know, we're doing it outside of the contract,
Right.
which we're supposed to be able to do that.
Yeah.
But obviously the union's been very involved in this discussion. We're supposed to have control of the health plan. And
Right. They can't tell me.
so my bottom line is that it seems to me that the changes here to help the impact on the village is de minimis unless you can show that this medical reimbursement thing is pretty fully utilized.
Except possible retention.
Well,
Yeah.
you've got the issue of retention. I mean, I don't know how many people we've lost because of the medical bill.
Or haven't attracted.
Well, I have interviewed some folks that have left, and that was one of the things that was cited when they do their, you know, I actually try to sit down with everybody and go through how was your experience, what were the good things, what were the things that were a problem. Health insurance came up on at least 3 of the 4 people I spoke to that have left within the last 18 months.
And these are voluntary.
Yeah, I can't force you to come and talk to me, but I try to do it as a, hey, we're just, an exit interview, we just want to get a sense of it. And people at that point, what do they have to lose? They're already out the door, so I would assume they're being honest with me. And then the recruitment piece is a little more difficult because we're not competitive in the environment in terms of wage, and we'll never be competitive to the private sector in terms of wage. So our challenge is to figure out ways to make our employment experience here, at least, for an employee, enough to keep them here, right? And it used to be that we had, tremendous, there was stability, which was important to people, and you had a retirement, and those things were important. People were willing to sacrifice some other things to have those things. Well, if you talk to any of the new folks entering the workforce, they could give a damn about stability and retirement. They don't even know what retirement is or care less. So in terms of being competitive to try to bring in younger people or, people that are in their 20s or, even up into their 30s, those things don't matter. So they just don't respond to that. So the health insurance still is something that people do pay attention to and respond to. And quite frankly, if you look at the plan designs, the thing that really, I think, took people out of sorts and when they made the change is look at the maximum out of pockets that are the difference between the platinum plan and the gold plan. So if I'm a family, the reimbursement co-insurance is 70% paid versus, so 30% is my responsibility. And the max out of pocket could be up to $11,200, which is a lot of money for our employees. A lot of money, period, but certainly for our employees. And then if you look at the difference, the platinum plan, it pays at 90%, so I don't have a 10% responsibility. And the maximum out of pocket for a family is $3,000. Again, an impact, I'm not trying to downplay that, but a hell of a lot different than $11,000. And when you look at the silver plan, those numbers are staggering. And really the silver plan is one of those high deductible, really it should only be for somebody who just is either incredibly young and thinks they're never going to get sick, or is just a high risk taker and is just simply willing to take a $14,000 hit if they end up with some sort of problem, which is not a crazy number for a simple medical problem to have that type of bill. So those are some of the factors that we were looking at when we sort of put this design together.
Can I make one comment about the medical reimbursement?
Yeah. Sure, go ahead, Heather.
So our potential spending on that is $59,000, and that's if everyone has a really horrible year with medical crises and they all submit for reimbursement. So that's the maximum potential. It's going to be a hard thing. I mean, we can give you the numbers, but next year it could be totally different. If someone has some sort of medical emergency and has to have surgery and they've never submitted for a reimbursement before, they'd be submitting for that reimbursement. Mm-hmm. So it will fluctuate by year. And, I'm obviously new to this piece, but we have to have that money available, whether we're using it or not, because we could potentially be using it. I just kind of wanted to say that. And the like Scott was just pointing out, the out-of-pocket expenses for each plan are different as well. Mm-hmm. So if a lot of people are on the platinum, the amount that they'll be submitting for medical reimbursement will actually be less than if they're on the platinum or the silver. Because those out-of-pocket expenses are more on those 2 other plans.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to point out, Jigs, previously we paid 80% of the platinum plan for the gold and the silver, which means some people didn't pay a premium at all in their biweeklies. That changes now to 80% of whatever plan they choose. So that would create a potential savings.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they all shift from the gold to the platinum, then
They might, but the premiums are higher too, so.
Right. I mean, I would guess that we'll have people both on platinum and gold. And right now we only have 2 people on silver and one might stay. But I have a feeling that the other person will probably switch to the gold or the platinum.
did you discuss a different from 80-20 for the platinum? More like a 75-25?
I tried to keep it consistent because one of the things we talked to the unions about was equity. We didn't want to try to drive people in a choice that might not have been in their best interest from the coverage standpoint. They wanted us to take more money away from the folks that took the incentive and fund their platinum plan with it. And so that was a huge talking point that we had to work through and convince, the union that wasn't going to serve our needs about trying to retain folks, because there are people that use that incentive to take their spouse's insurance. And if it's a high deductible, they use the incentive to basically cover as much of that deductible as they can. And you can see in some of these deductible levels, you don't cover even that. So health insurance is it's a challenge. There's no doubt about it. And I am very sensitive to the cost piece of it because I know the board has been involved in some of these changes over time. And so these are not things that we brought to you lightly. We took a lot of time and energy and tried to figure out all the different ways to make it work for the employer and the employee. So this is sort of where we netted out after all of that.
Okay, so you need a motion for us on this, do you not, to accept it before you, and then you're gonna go to the select board and then we go to the union with it.
So really all I'm asking you is just a motion for the proposal. And then if that's the case, I would make it a contingent upon select board approval. And then, you could potentially, if they, for some reason, don't approve, you would still then have the ability we would just revert to our existing plan because we'd have to start our open enrollment soon.
Okay.
And
So
this would-
go ahead, Jigs. Yeah.
This would be coordinated with the upcoming union negotiations, that this is a done deal, dead, finished, no more.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they knew that.
Okay.
Yes. It was, that part was interesting, but it got resolved to where they were on board. So yes.
Further discussion or motion? Gentlemen?
I move that we accept the recommendation from the Personnel Committee regarding health insurance benefits for 2023.
Do we want to make a contingent on the select board accepting it as well, or not?
On the select board accepting the proposal as well.
Okay. A second, please.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on this proposal? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I hear none. We have moved on this and we'll go forward. Let's see what the select board says next week. All right, next item. I'm sorry. Was there something else?
No, that was it.
Yeah, there's actually a time delay on Zoom. So I'm talking over people. And I just realized that we did not put the budget on this agenda to discuss. It's here, but we don't have it as an agenda item.
That was more for your information about the
It's
fund
just the
balance.
village.
Right, it's just a general fund. So I will have a full financials on your next.
Okay, although typically we're supposed to do it the first meeting of the month instead of the second, but that's what's going to happen. So we can talk about it if we want, but That's it.
Yep.
I also noticed water and wastewater aren't in there either, so.
Yep.
Number 5 is the BF Riverfront Trail update. We have a
So
couple-
a couple pieces of this I just wanted to bring to the board's attention. There's a proposed sign, which I put a copy of in your packets, that just names that trail area as the Bellows Falls Riverfront Trail. So they're trying to give it a consistent name. So it really starts at the Riverfront Park at the Historical Society, goes down past our sewage treatment plant and sort of ends there at the little overlook area. There's a proposal that the select board will be looking at in December with a grant from the state of Vermont for a transportation alternatives grant to take that trail basically from that current overlook area all the way up until behind the Liberty Mill, sort of and ending sort of at the end right near the Saxons River there. So exactly where it's going to end, we're not 100% sure, but sort of near Paper Mill Road and sort of at that end of that portion of the island. And that'll be on, like I said, that'll be on for consideration by the select board. And if it passes and then it's ultimately funded, you might see some extension of that trail. But you might start to hear that name kicking around as they're looking at publicizing the trails, as well as the walk bike committee. They're no longer the bike pedestrian committee. We'll also then be looking at, if that extension is approved, they'd be looking at other extensions through Westminster to get it into other wider trail network, which would then, open up opportunities for folks to connect to other larger trails in the region. So that work's a little more difficult because you're dealing with some private property and it's going to take some negotiations. But
Yeah.
This is all on public areas and would be a nice extension to that existing trail if it was in fact approved. So I thought it was important enough just to bring it to the board's attention just for informational purposes. And if you hear more about it through that grant process and ultimately if it's successful, that was just something I wanted you to be aware of.
Where did you say it goes to now officially?
So it basically ends at the overlook. So
Where does it say? You see where it says overlook?
Well, I think starts up here and then, so does it go down underneath the Route 5 bridge there?
No, that's
Saxons River down in here?
no, it doesn't go
That's
all the way
where
there yet. That's the proposed extension.
Okay.
Right.
So
there's a thing that says existing footpath to be improved during phase 3. Is that where it stops?
Yes,
Yeah,
with
so-
the green, right?
green is basically the
Oh,
current,
green, okay.
right. And then there's sort of an overlook area where it says install picnic table, sort of
Yeah.
that not weed control. So it's in that general area where that
Okay.
labyrinth overlook is. And then from there, the red dotted line would be the continuation behind the plant, past the railroad right of way, and then behind the Liberty Mill.
Okay, so it pretty much goes right to the end of the wastewater facility.
Pretty close.
Currently.
Yep. Doesn't impact any of us in relationship to any cost or requirement. It's just, if it's extended, it would be, I think just a good piece of information and something the board should be aware of.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, then. Yes, so I'm sorry, did someone say something?
Nope.
Getting some feedback, I guess. So we don't have the budget to discuss, so we do have it here. Numbers so far, and we'll get a better full budget next meeting.
Yes.
Okay, so we move down to reviewing agenda items for the next meeting, which will be November 2022. Yeah, November 22, 2022. And that'll include the budget, of course, and anything else you might have right now, Scott?
Nothing specific. We will have financials. I'd like to, and it's up to you, but I was thinking since Stefan's not here and you're remote, maybe we'll hold off on our executive session for this evening and move that to the 22nd. We certainly have time to do that.
Okay, so that's related to the last piece of paper in the folder. Okay,
Correct.
all right.
We have time.
I'm fine with that. What about the rest of the board? You okay waiting till next week, next meeting in 2020 of the 22nd?
I missed what's the last?
It's the request from the PBA for negotiations.
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to have a
Yeah.
executive
Full board.
session.
Yes.
Contracts, but we can do that at the 22nd and still have time to initiate contract with those
Okay.
folks.
Because you've got the end of November or something. They've,
We've already noticed them and they've noticed. So November 1st, you're supposed to notice each other
Okay.
with an intent to bargain. So that's happened. This is just their letter back saying, yes,
Okay.
we'd like to bargain.
yeah, okay.
So-
Have we heard from the other union yet?
Yes, they've also said they want to bargain.
Okay, so that include our water and sewer,
Yes.
and town, and of course, people in town hall. Okay, all right, so we also have a joint board meeting the following Tuesday on the 29th.
Yes.
For that,
Just a question, have we gone back to a normal town hall schedule?
We're not a 5-day a week yet. That's one of the things we're gonna talk about.
yep,
Because I think, as I understand it, that's in your purview. I mean, that was not a decision that the board's made. This board never made the decision.
No.
But it was the manager that made the decision for obvious reasons.
Right.
You know, with COVID. But I think the COVID era has morphed enough that, you know, we're now living with COVID. And so I think we should live with COVID and have the, you know, rather than make this a negotiation thing,
Mhm.
it shouldn't be. It should be dealt with by the manager.
right. As I previously recall, pre-COVID, the building was open 5 days a week and the clerk's office was open half a day. Till noon, I think, is what the previous schedule had been in 2019, prior to sometime in 2020. But again, it's a management decision. Anything else for the joint board agenda? Will we have any updates from Attorney Stern on the title searches or how that's going?
Yes, we'll have a full update on tax sale, which is a big piece. So yes, for sure, we will have that. We will also have, I think, a recommendation from the Fire Equipment Committee about this feasibility study and the scope for the feasibility study. And we have a meeting next Monday, the 14th, for the Fire Equipment Committee. Yes,
Yeah.
Wade's
Oh,
already-
that's right. By the 22nd, I can't be sure about the rental inspection ordinance, which we're gonna be out, we're having a meeting on that on the 16th, with the ordinance committee and others. And so I don't know if we'll have anything from that. And also the fire ban, same thing, that'll be there. And we did ask, last meeting, we asked Josh to find out where we were on the ordinances that had already been submitted, amendments that have been submitted to Ray over the last year or so.
Yes, he was gonna give us a schedule and work on that, so I'll get in touch with Josh.
That's him, okay. Okay, great. And then gets us down to, do we have any orders, bills, and warrants? I know I've signed them all, except for maybe last Thursday.
I'll move approval.
I'll second that.
Okay, great. Any questions? All right, as soon as I get better, I'll come in and sign that one and the new one. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. Moving on to other business. Scott?
All set?
Okay, Wade?
Nothing.
Jigs?
Oh, I'm good, thank you.
And Jeff?
Thank you.
Okay. And except for wanting to get better, I don't have anything either. It's 7:04, so the polls are closed. We'll hear about the big to-dos soon enough. And at least you're inside, so there was no fighting. Yep.
There's a lot of suspense here in Vermont.
Yeah. Yeah, we had to have two flaggers go to help at night this evening shift because of concerns with the amount of traffic and the stimulation of the citizens concerning the matters to be, selected today. So, helping people get to their cars and whatnot. There's a lot of people in Brattleboro. That was in Brattleboro.
Wow, yeah, I was gonna say, 'cause,
Yeah.
I'm wondering how many people showed up at the polls looking for the
Yeah.
ballot,
I wanted to know too.
you know?
The early voting was pretty heavy.
That's
Really?
what I heard.
Yes.
Carrying your ballot down to the polls and voting it there seemed kind of silly.
A lot of people did the mailbox outside, and they had a pretty good turnout for that. I was
We did
surprised
the-
at some of those
we did the
numbers.
box out here.
Yeah, it was really, I think you're gonna see some pretty big numbers from that compared to a normal midterm. Yeah.
Hopefully not. We'll have to find out what happened with whose might have gotten returned to the state. I'm assuming that's where they go back if they didn't get delivered. So before they went in. All right. Executive session will not be until the next meeting on the 22nd. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed? I doubt it. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, and good night. Stay
I
healthy.
feel better. Yeah, feel
Thank
better.
you. Thank you.
Recording